Welcome everybody to ShopBot training. Today's topic is we're going to do a puzzle face where we're actually going to be going in and taking and cutting these parts out like you would with a scroll saw. Where a scroll saw might have a 64th of an inch of a bit, we're going to cut this out with a 1/4 inch or bigger. And how do we still get these real clean, narrow kerfs here that are would replicate what's on a scroll saw? And we'll also get into V carving. How do you get a V carve to come out past the piece? And we'll work with some node editing and some layer management. And this will be the file that we're going to be working on. So what we'll do here is we'll actually draw this file and show you it being cut out on the machine too, so you can understand the full process of it. So it's two different types of wood. You've got a base, and then we've also cut the puzzle itself out of something else. So what you'll do is you'll want to go and find a clip art or a JPEG or something that you want, and what you'll do is bring that in and trace it, and we'll cut it apart, and that's where we're going to go with this. So this is the puzzle face training, and this is an example of what we are going to do right here. So let's kind of show you the method of the madness here that I create when I make this file. So I'm just in the VCarve profile, and in the VCarve profile here you've got your work surface, which is your white box. But notice I got a lot going on out here outside. So I'll kind of step you through what's going on with this. Here's the video of the one we just saw. This was the first puzzle. And then the one we'll be working on today is where we will actually import a JPEG. We can do a trace feature where we'll trace it, and then we're going to make a size that has to have a tolerance to fit inside of this base and come out. Think of kids using puzzles. If the parts are too hard to push in and out of the puzzle itself, it's not going to be as much fun to use. So we're going to put a couple different tolerances on these and offsets so that the puzzle pieces all work. And what we'll do then is we're also going to come in here and slice away with some random arcs to make this thing apart. Using the scissors tool, we'll trim this down, and then what we'll actually come up here, and I like to make one copy for each piece. That way when I start snipping these away, it's a lot easier to see what the original is. So what we'll do is we'll take each piece and we'll snip it away, and notice what happens with that is now it leaves this that we want to V-carve out for the monkey's face. It leaves it with a dead spot right here. So if we were to close this with a straight line, what it would actually do is it would end right here, and the V-carve would end, and it would not transfer down to the next piece right here. You'd get two flats there. So what we'll do here is we'll go into node editing and add a little bit extra into that vector so we can then machine that out. So that's where we're going to go with today's training, and we'll start it from scratch and draw a new one. But before doing that, I would like you to be able to see the machining process of how this machined out. So this does use two different types of wood. The first one here that we're using is a piece of sugar maple, and this is the base that's being cut out. So notice I'm just doing a couple small steps. I don't want to step down too far with sugar maple. It's a really hard wood. Also notice there's a ramp that's added into the tool path there, so it ramps down in with that end mill before it starts making its full passes. And notice the chip load too, a nice big healthy chip that's coming off there. Normally you'd have a dust foot on and a dust collector connected, but for video purposes we really wouldn't be able to see any action here. So notice now it's starting to do the outside, where it's ramping with a spiral ramp all the way down, working its way down. Now it's starting to lift there for the tabs, and break the tabs out and pull it apart. Now here's the second material. So this is the second board screwed down, and now it's going to do the V carving of the puzzle face. So it's going to go, and notice that we have to do the puzzle face in separate pieces. It's not like a scroll saw where we can have it all as one. We're going to be using a big bit to cut this out. So if the pieces were right on top of each other, we'd have too big of a kerf and the puzzle wouldn't fit together. So the ShopBot is prompting you right now to change bits to whatever you're using for your end mill. lock your collet together, get it pushed back up in there, and re-zero it. Just for video purposes, I used a big 1/2 inch bit so we can see down inside these kerfs and see what's going on with the different parts. So it ramps down in. It's got tabs to hold those little parts in place. And again, you should have your dust foot on, because when you're not sucking up the dust and you got a small bit, you could actually break your bit down inside these kerfs if they're not being cleaned out. Or worst case, it's just going to be dulling your bit. So it's machining the different parts out, the 5 different parts. Make sure that it does cut all the way through. This is just held down with screws, so if we was to try to take this off and put it back on and line it back up this way, we'd never get it in the exact same spot that we had it. So notice the V-carve parts are on there first, and wherever they were hung out past, it was getting cut off, but it lets the V-carve transist between the 5 pieces, and we'll see this as we go back to the Vectric software and start drawing this. So that's the puzzle. There's the puzzle being cut, and the base we had already cut, and just verifying that it's cut through. I'm happy with that. Now I can pull my screws off. And now you've got the tabs that are holding the pieces. You don't want to just push those tabs out by hand because it could split your wood. Use a knife and nip it off. Then go over to a spindle sander or a random orbital sander of some sort, disc sander, and clean them up. And then for finishing this project, what I would do here is I probably would take a small paintbrush and I'd paint down inside this V-carve. And then once it dries, whatever is up on top is where I'd take my random orbital sander and then sand it back down flush, and then get into staining the material with either some sort of a stain or polyurethane just to seal up the wood nice so it doesn't hold any grime or dirt down into its finish. And notice on the bottom of this bowl here, I had a pretty rough piece of wood, so there's going to be some sanding there. So what we need to do is we're going to put an offset into these individual parts so that they fit down nice, and then it might look a little thick right there on the side, but there's not much there. It's just a few thousandths, 30 thousandths of a offset that goes in here so the puzzle fits nice and snug, or does not fit nice and snug down into the base. So this is what we're going to draw, and then we'll come back and watch this video right at the end so you can see it after we've drawn it, how to go through the whole process. Alright, so for this, I'm actually going to create a brand new file. So I will go to my Vectric software here, and I'm going to open up either a VCarve Pro, Aspire, Partworks 3.5 or older. Most of this all can be done in the same thing. So this is where we'll set it up for the size of our material. So for this project, I had just found some scrap pieces of maple and oak that were laying around and measured them with a tape measure as far as the X and the Y would go. And I had 8 inches across, and it was 7 inches high, and that material actually measured 0.78 in thickness. And I'm going to make my machining down to the bottom of the spoil board, to the top of the spoil board, bottom of my material, and go ahead and enter it here. So the first part of the project was the base. The base is the simplest, so let's start by drawing that. That was simply a 6-inch circle, is what that base was. And it had a lip around it that was approximately 3/8 wide. So I'm going to create the circle, and I could create another circle, or I can come down here to the offset and have it offset inwards by 3/8 of an inch. And really that's as simple as the base is right there. That's the base that we're going to put our puzzle pieces in. So what do we want to have here for a main puzzle? Again, this is where you can go and find different JPEGs and vectors. And when you're doing this stuff, check on trademark infringements and copyrights and find out what the sharing laws are for that file, for that clip art. You don't want to find somebody that has a clip art and you're now selling it without their permission. So make sure you check into that. So right here I've got this monkey, and you can stretch him out now, or you can wait till after you get him traced. But right now he's just a JPEG, so we need to vectorize this monkey. So to do that, I will go in here to Trace Bitmap, and he is a colorful guy, so I don't need all these colors, but I'm going to bring it down here so there's a couple I can select. So there is one route. And it all depends on which ways you want your lines to be. So I'm going to leave all this stuff at the default and hit preview and come in here and see what we got. So I can see by hitting preview what it's doing around the corners, if I like this or not. And if you really want to know more about this tracing feature, there's tutorials on both our website and Vectric's website that explain all of this with more detail. So I'm happy with that for what we're doing here. This is going to work just fine. So I will go ahead and hit apply and close. So now I've got my vectorized monkey face. And I don't want the JPEG here anymore. I might want it for later. So I can go up here to the layer option and just simply turn that off by taking and clicking on the light bulb, and makes it go away. So then maybe later on we want to reference that again. I can always come back up here to layer and turn the bitmap layer back on, and there it is. So it's still there, it's just kind of hidden in the background right now. Alright, so here's my monkey face, and let me take him and center him inside of the circle here. Whoops, what happened there? Well, it's centering all of the individual pieces. So we'll edit undo that, and if we're going to be moving parts around like this, right now is a good time to maybe group them together so the monkey parts all stay together while we're moving it around. Okay, so I will take and redo that and hold him and center him like this into the circle. So here's really the main parts of what we're going to be getting into cutting apart here. We got our base, which we know I can group that together if I wanted to for right now, so I know that's a part that stays together, and this, and then I'll have to ungroup those a little later while I get ready to toolpath them. Well, the problem is now we have the 6-inch base with a 3/8 lip around it, and we need to take this monkey face and give him a circle so we know what outer perimeter the actual puzzle pieces would have. So if I measure this across here, I have a distance of 5 1/4 of an inch. Well, if I took and made a 5 1/4 inch circle that was my puzzle pieces, that would be the exact same size as that inner lip. So it would not fit down in there. It would fit down in there once and it would probably get stuck. So we need to make it with a little bit of a offset. So what I'm going to do is actually make a circle that's a little bit smaller than this one here. I'm going to make it 30 thousandths smaller. And if you remember back to that video where you saw the gap along the side, that makes it so it's easier for the puzzle pieces to come in and out. So right here is where I could ungroup those and do an offset. I could come over here and create a new circle. And I guess just for the ease of doing this, I will create an offset of a circle, and I want it to go inwards by 30 thousandths, so that's 0.03. And when I say that doing that, make sure it said inwards, and let me group these back together just so we can see the difference here of the circles. What you can see what's going on here is there is a circle that's 30 thousandths smaller, and that's going to be 0.03 right here on this side, and that would be 0.03 again down here on the bottom. So we're actually 0.06 smaller, and that's fine for this. This is a puzzle. We want pieces to come in and out, and that's the few that I've cut now. That tolerance has worked really well. And then we'll also put one into the individual slices that when we cut the puzzle apart. So I like to get in the habit, if I'm going to start altering stuff, of making copies and keeping them over here in no man's land, just so I have them there for reference for later. Because as I start modifying stuff, there might be times where I want to come back to the original one. So there's my two pieces that I have. And what we're going to want to do now is we're going to want to start slicing him apart. So this base here, I've got a copy over to the right. so I don't need to have that in right now. I'm just going to be working on this puzzle face. So let's refer back real quick to the finished file so you can see what we're about to do. So we've got our basic circle around here that has its tolerance built in. We have our vectorized image. And what we're going to do now is create some arcs or lines, or you could get in and doing some squigglies and curves and really, spruce this up. And then we'll trim that down flush. And this makes, in this example, 5 pieces. So the 5 pieces I brought up here, separated them, and then joined them and did some node editing. And what we'll do with them then is we have to nest those into our part size. They can't go close to each other. If I had these parts right on top of each other and I try cutting them out with a 1/4-inch bit, it's going to cut too far into each part and they won't fit together. So that's why they have to be cut apart, so you can give thickness around here for the bit cutting, and you'll see that when we toolpath. Okay, so let's go back to our new file. So with him here, I know I've got an original over to the right, so I'm going to go ahead and start cutting into this guy. And I'm just going to simply do some arcs, where I bring them out past the circle, and I'm kind of just randomly picking where I want to split this from. Do I want to have it split over? I want to have it split over certain areas, so it makes a good puzzle when it comes apart. So really, each one of these that I do comes out a little bit different the next time you do it. So maybe we'll do one here where we split it right down his face like that. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. And we'll put one more down here through the bottom. Okay. So, again, I've come to another step now, where in case I wanted to go back to that, I'm just copying and pasting it over here, so I have this to come back to. And now we're going to use the scissor command and trim these so they're flush with the outside of the puzzle and with each other inside the puzzle. And then this is how you've made up your pieces. Okay. So there we go. I've got 5 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright. So now to do this, to try to sit here and do this on one itself would drive me crazy. I'd be clicking and worrying and messing things up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first put an original copy over here, so I have it to come back to. And then I'm also going to take it and bring it up here. And since I have 5 pieces, I'm going to make 5 copies of it. And I'm just using Control-C, Control-V, and using the arrow keys to move it over. Alright, so let's just start right here with the scissor command and start cutting away at this guy. So right here I already see I got kind of a little tricky spot right there. So we'll have to remember that when we do. Now why isn't this scissor allowing me to snip? I'm waiting for one of the guys online here to have caught me that. You guys in the training are being good today. So what happened was I've still got objects that are grouped, so I have to ungroup them, so this way I can snip them apart. Okay, so now I can start going along, and I'm just snipping all around the first piece. That's the only part I want to keep right here. And there. So piece 1 has been kept, and then I can come in here and delete anything that I don't want for that. So there's piece 1, and I'm just going to work around here and doing all the other pieces. So this is the piece we just kept, so we now want to cut that away and just snip everything away that's touching this next piece. This will give you good practice with your maneuvering skills. I find that the way you get good in the software is, yeah, you'll memorize the icons over here. They'll come to you in time, but really being able to navigate well with a mouse, I find to be my most important thing. I can use that center wheel for panning, I can use it for scrolling, and that's how I can get in and out of these parts so quick, by doing just that. And I'm just snipping away. The parts. Another thing that it's good to do before you even start spending too much time with the snipping is before you slice this thing apart, it's not a bad idea to go and do a quick V-carve preview and see what it looks like. See if you're happy with the actual final V-carve of your vector. So you could actually have taken and checked that before you spent all this time slicing it. And what I mean by that is simply I would have just taken this guy here and brought him in like this to your working area. Just did a quick V-carve and see how it looked. Make sure it was what you wanted. Like this right here, I previously said, oh, this looks good, but this isn't very thick right here, these parts. You know, what if I would have actually taken and said, hey, give it a start depth of 0.03, a little bit further down in, give it a deeper cut. Now preview that image, and it broadens those V-carves out. Maybe give it a little bit more character. So that's just a quick little reminder, help thing that you can do. Okay, so we were snipping up here and get into getting rid of the parts that I don't need. So here's our 5 parts now. However, if we were right now to try to just V-carve these the way they are, there's a flat edge on the side of these, and it won't transist into the next part. So if I was to set this to V-carve, the V goes off the width of the line and the depth of the bit, so that angle wouldn't have it come flat out through this. So some people could take and they might want to just do like a offset of, say, a certain distance. For me, I like to go in and do the node editing so I can actually pull these vectors out right where I want them to be. So here's a new copy, and we'll start right here with this first one. So I can sit here and tell it to join these vectors by selecting those and coming over here. If I just do with a straight line, well, it's going to be underneath this line and it won't V-carve properly. So what I'm going to have it do is first I want to connect that end with a curve. It puts that out past, which is what I want it to do. And now I want to connect it over to this line. So now I've created a closed vector that I can now V-carve down inside. A little simpler right here when you just have 2 lines. Just click it twice. But this doesn't stick out quite as far as I'd want it to stick. I want it to stick out about as far as it is wide in here. So that's where I'm going to go into node editing. And I prefer to hit A and switch it to an arc, or right click and hit A for arc. And I like to bring it out a little bit further. I just found that when you do this, it makes it come out a little further and looks a little bit better doing it by this method. Okay. Versus here with the Bezier trying to grab it and not alter it inside. I don't want to alter the inside of this. I just want to alter out here. So by me stretching an arc, it does not mess with the lines in there. So this is where you're going to spend some time now in node editing and going around here and trying to close these vectors up. So I need to make sure I'm grabbing the right ones. There's that one. I come down here, I need to now connect it over to this one. And there it is, top and bottom and added. However, again, not a fan of how far that sticks out. That V-carve isn't going to transist very well. I go to node editing, I switch it to an arc, and I'm pulling it out a little bit deeper. I'm not altering anything inside of that puzzle piece. Okay, so that's it for that piece. That was an easy one. This guy here, we've got two. So this here, it puts it out there. That one there, I can click it twice and it caps it on both sides. I'm going to switch back into node editing, change that to an arc, and I want to bring that out further because that will transist with the same depth that the puzzle piece is. So just working my way around on these. This is a good project to mess with for getting efficient with your mouse and your shortcut keys. And if anybody's ever wondered where are all these shortcut keys coming from that you guys click on, if you go up to Help and then the first menu there is Help Contents, there is a whole glossary at the very end that tells you all of the different shortcut commands. That's where all these are. So what I recommend you do is go and print that out, the shortcut keys, and have them next to you while you're drawing, and then you'll get used to using those keys. And then you've got one hand on the mouse while you're drawing and one hand on the keyboard, and you can get going a lot faster. Alright, so just kind of bringing those out. Almost got them done here. And there we go. Last piece over here. So this last piece, I want to connect these. I want to connect these here. And so to this one here, do we want that coming all the way out? Well, I have to come over here and check with the piece that it goes next to over here. So that pretty much is coming into the two pieces right there. So will that transist out? No, we can preview it and move the pieces around and see. Alright, so I'm going to bring that out. So it takes a little time, especially if the more pieces you make, the more times it's going to take. And really, if I think about how this would work, that's going to come out there and there. So that's really going around like that is going to come into effect over here. Let me just grab this guy and we will bring him over and check and see what is that going to do to that part. So this might be where a good example if you group something together right now so you don't accidentally move it into the other piece. So what's going to happen here if I zoom in and get these really close? And what's going to happen here with this piece? So the piece we're looking at is grouped, and the black piece is what's on the back side. So if I was to come in here and let's see, okay, it's going to V-carve this out. It's going to come in here and V-carve this, but it's also going to take this little corner out right here. Now, is that something we can live with or not for this puzzle? For me, it's just this tiny little corner. It isn't going to make a big difference. I'm not even going to waste my time changing it, but that's where you could go in and play around with your editing. Another thing people like to do when they start getting all these different pieces and it's kind of getting congested here is taking and putting certain parts on different layers. That way you don't have to try to figure out what part's supposed to be where, especially if you're going to line them up on top of each other. So I might take these, right click and go move to layer, new layer, and we'll call this V-carve. And you can make this a different color so it's a little easier to work with. So you can see what's going on. And then, you know, say you really wanted to come in here and edit that, you could bring this over now and line it up a lot easier. Okay, so we've drawn our parts, and now we need to toolpath the parts. So we're going to add another little tolerance in at the end where we do an offset in there, and we'll go ahead and cut this out. So the first thing I would do is the base. This material I had here was for the base. And I will sometimes just keep stuff out here in no man's land, even if I'm going to use it on different parts. So right now we'll save this. And notice here I had a puzzle face and a puzzle face base. I actually made two different files. So that's where the two different files come from. Because they're two different thicknesses of material that I used. The puzzle face base is 0.78. And we'll toolpath that first by ungrouping this. And the first thing I did was pocketed out this middle. And we did a 1/2 inch deep pocket with a 1/2 inch straight bit. So if that's not the bit that you want, go into your tool database and find the correct one. Did this one as an offset, and I did a climb cut. And remember that since I did this one out of sugar maple, I gave it a pretty small pass depth. I didn't want to lose position on this. And I also like to give it a ramp. You want to put a ramp in there, you're not just digging down into that wood. So pocket 0.5, calculate, come in here, I can see the turquoise for my ramps. I can see the different layers that it's doing as far as depth cuts. And once we get our other one here, we'll preview them. And the second one I did was a profile. And say right now I forget how thick my material was, I can always type in Z, or I could type in T for thickness. And I like to cut a little bit deeper. So, whoops, I just hit Z equals and it puts up the material thickness. But I want to go Z plus 0.01 and go a little bit deeper into my material. And I'm not going to be using a V-bit. I'm going to use that same 1/2 inch bit so I don't have to change it. And I want to machine on the outside of that line. And on this one here, we need to add some tabs so that the part stays in place. And I'm just going to say go ahead and add some tabs to that. And ramp, I want a nice spiral ramp. It'll just ramp like a big spiral all the way around that and let it do its thing. And then go ahead and put profile base so I know what it is. And I'm just going to come back here and double check since I'm talking and moving along. A little bit thicker, 4 passes, but it's going to spiral down. That's fine. I'm on the outside of that line. Okay, so far everything's good. I always get in the habit of reading this message. The time you don't, it's going to say 7.9 versus 0.79, and you're going to have a reminder in your spoil board of why you should be reading warning messages. Okay, so I can see tabs. I can see that's one big long ramp. And let's just preview it and make sure we're happy with it. I'm looking for ramps here. I'm looking for the cuts to see how the speeds are going. I see that one's going really, really slow for cutting that out. And I'm not happy with that. So I'm going to hit stop down here and actually stop the preview. And hit close. And come back here and go, what's going on here? 7 minutes to do that. It's kind of taking a long time. So I'm going to go back in here and just edit this. So 2 inches a second. If I'm only going 1/8 of an inch deep, I can probably get away with 3/8. So this is where you'd want to go check your chip load calculator and make sure it's what you want. So, alright, so then go ahead and run your preview and make sure it's what you want. And after that, you would come in here and save this out. And you actually need to save out the ShopBot .sbp file. This is your part file that comes out that the machine can read. When you come over here and do file save, you're just saving the drawing file, your .crv. That's where you can come back and modify the file itself. But when the machine's ready for the file, you can hit save right here, and this will transfer it into all the code for you. So I would just call this the puzzle base and saves it as a ShopBot file. So this one would be ready now for the puzzle So what I would do here is I would go File, Save As, and I would save it as my puzzle face base, since that one's all done. And then, once I know that this one's saved, I'm going to go ahead and delete those toolpaths, and I'm not going to be working on the base anymore. I'm actually going to be working on the puzzle pieces. So this is where I would come up now and do File, Save As, Puzzle Face. And then you save it as that and not the base. So now you can actually work on your pieces. So this one here is out of a piece of maple, soft maple, so it's a lot whiter color. And the width on the X on this one was actually 18 inches long, and it was 6 inches wide, and this one only had a thickness of 0.74. So everything's changed here. And again, I just went in and changed and made a new file. I'm not working on the base anymore. So this is kind of in the way here. Let me just move this down. And now we've got our puzzle pieces. So I'm just going to make a copy of those and bring them down here into the material. And I can't have them too close to each other because I got to have enough around them for the thickness of the bit. And then we're going to cut these with a 1/4 inch bit all the way around. I like to take and bring in the layout lines by coming over here and grabbing them out of the ruler and just kind of giving myself about a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch on the perimeter, so I know not to put my part too close to the edge where the bit would be cutting out of the wood. So I'm just eyeballing these right now where I think is a good distance apart, and then what I would do is preview this and see if it's really too close or too far away from each other. And what I always try to do is, if this was one piece of wood I'm not going to be able to get anything else out of, I would just clearly leave these apart. But if you have an extra part of the wood over there that you could maybe get another part of your project out of, then you'd want to maximize it. But this part here, we're not going to get anything else out of this, so I'm going to keep these parts pretty far distance apart, just so I don't have to worry about weakening the wood, taking a chance of cutting into each other. Okay, so that looks good to me right there. So we've already done the drawing on this, and what I want to do here is just come over here into the Toolpaths tab, and the first thing we'd want to do is this V-carve. And I previewed it before at both 0 and with a 0.03 depth, which gave it a little bit deeper of a cut. And I think that was just a scotch too deep, so I'm going to put it at 0.02. I'm going to select a V90 bit, and then I'm going to come in here, and I'm actually going to just do a big sweep select all the vectors, and then I only have to click on 5 here to unselect them. And I'm holding the shift key down as I do this. Okay, so that will grab them all, and there's just my V-carve puzzle pieces. Calculate, and it says there is one open vector identified in the selection and are being ignored. So there are 13 remaining vectors. So someplace I've got a vector that is not closed, and to me that poses a problem because it probably will not machine. So what I'm going to do here is turn on my solid preview and come in here and look and see where this open vector, if it's getting ignored and not machined, or if it fixed itself and was okay. So far so good, but I can also come in here, right click, and go select all open vectors. So boom, it selected it right there. And so that's going right around where our little puzzle piece was. So by turning on the solid, it's showing me that it is going to machine everything out inside of this, which is not what we want. So I would actually have to take and close this right here. And I can do a join, and it says, nope, it will not join with the current parameters. So what I would actually have to do is click on this here and come down here and do it with a straight line or a curved line. and I did it with a curve so it sticks out there. And the last thing you have to do is, it's not going to fix itself from here. You actually need to come in, and even if you hit recalculate, it says OK, but when we do a preview, it's still showing that. So I need to come back into the actual tool path and make sure that vector is now selected as well. And now hit calculate and preview visible tool paths. Now it's going around that ear just fine. Alright. So, it kind of looks a little difficult here to see what's going on. You got this monkey face that's spread under all these different parts. But what happens next is we'll do a profile around all the main pieces. And again, I don't remember how thick my material is, so I can just type in the Z plus 0.01 to go a little bit deeper, equals, so 7.5. And I'm going to do this one with a 1/4 inch bit. So I got a 1/4 inch upcut bit. And it's a soft maple. I'm going to leave it at the 3 passes. I want to be on the outside of the line. And here it says allowance offset. Well, the ShopBot's going to cut this thing so darn accurate that those pieces will be nice and tight against each other. And if you get into stuff with more curves than what I've got here, where you've got more of a squiggly that does an inside and an outside curve, yeah, your allowance offset, especially like on a jigsaw puzzle, would be important to have because it will be too tight. It won't go in there. So if you go in here and gave this a negative 0.005 of a allowance, that would be a 10,000th of a allowance by taking into account both sides. And I'll show you this here in just a sec with the preview. So I'm going to go ahead and add tabs. And this one, instead of just doing auto tabs, where it's going to put them in parts that are very inconvenient for me, I'm just going to go delete tabs and put them in places where I want them. For me, I like to put them with the grain. I like to put them in places that are easy for me to get to for sanding purposes afterwards, and make life easier on yourself. You don't want them to get in the way of where a V-carve might be. So I'm trying to put as many of these as I can with the grain. So added tabs. I like to always have a ramp if I can. And I don't need the spiral on this one. I'll just have a smooth ramp. And let's go preview this and show you what the allowance offset did. Profile, puzzle, pieces, calculate, read this warning, don't just click through, 0.74, 0.7, that's fine, that's a 10,000ths in, and then I will preview this toolpath, and notice it's going to be cutting out here outside of where we cut a little extra with a V-carve. So here it is, it's leaving the tabs, and we'll just look how this came out. See, it fixed it over here. I didn't have to. That's why I didn't spend the time with the node editing before, because I knew it was just going to cut itself out. Okay, so what is this pocket allowance that he was talking about? Right here, if we have these showing up, and I zoom in here and I got the solid preview turned on, I can actually see that here's my vector line that I said cut on the outside of the line, but I gave it a negative offset. So it's actually cutting into the part 0.005 on each side, on that side and that side, so that gives it a 10,000th of a tolerance. So it's just another tolerance that you can build in into your part. So with this being done, if I liked how it looked in 3D preview, I know that I got enough room all the way around my parts, and I'm happy with it. At this point, I would go and save this, and save this now as not the puzzle base, but the puzzle pieces. Save. So that's saving the ShopBot toolpath. That's what goes to the machine. The machine reads this code that it will generate in this post processor. The file save over here is simply just saving the drawing file. So if I look back in my folder here, puzzle face training folder, I've got puzzle face and puzzle face base that are my .crvs, my vectoric drawing files. And then I also have them here that are a .sbp, and that's what the ShopBot's going to read, is that drawing file. That's what you'll actually load up in yours. So let's just watch the video of it being cut one more time, and we'll see everything we just drew come to life. So it's making its step downs. It's right there, it's ramping in, and then it makes its step overs and fills out that circle, and then it will do its step down again. So we're pocketing out the base. And then again, you'd want to make sure you've calculated your chip load. You got the right chips on everything. Have your dust collector on and your dust foot in place. And just stay with the machine. It's the first time I run this file. I want to sit there with it, make sure it's doing right. I can hit the space bar if something's wrong and pause it, or I can hit the emergency stop if I need to get out of it real quick. Alright, so there's your base. Now you've changed boards, and here's the longer board, and here's it doing the V-carve. And see how it's a little bit deeper because I had that .02 depth in there. Just gives it a little bit more character in the V-carve, I feel. And here it is doing the different pieces all the way around. And then the ShopBot will, if you save both files the way I did to one file, it will prompt you to change your bit. So then you can move it to a safe position, change your bit, and re-zero it. Some people will also just save one file at a time, so then they can just run that individual file. Either ways works, whatever works best for you. And no, that is not the 1/4 inch bit that I used as a toolpath. This is a 1/2 inch. It's a little easier to see in the video with a big wider kerf. So it's just going to go around and do the parts. There's the tabs on them, and we've checked all this in 3D preview before we come out here to the machine. So what we went through here is a sort of like an old-fashioned scroll saw puzzle that now you can do with a ShopBot, and this is how you get around doing we can't get that thin kerf that you can with a scroll saw blade, but we can just move our parts a little further apart, and a little bit of messing around with some snipping and some node editing, we're able to recreate what we used to do by hand with the scroll saw. And now we can do it over and over again, and we can do it a heck of a lot faster than than at least I do when I was using a scroll saw. So when you get done with this, pull the parts out and pull the tabs off, clean them up, paint it if you'd like, and then stain it up, and you've got yourself a pretty neat little project. So, and verify that it's all the way through before you remove those screws, because it's not going to go back down. And just a few tabs. Sharp utility knife works really well for this. And just go clean them up, and boom, you've now created yourself a nice little puzzle. And then here's just showing it, the final puzzle. And I'll just click out of this one. There's the monkey one that we drew, but the one that I just finished all the way was this guy. And this is just a vector that I got from a book, and cut that out so I could keep that on my desk to keep challenging myself. So that's what we did. I hope you enjoyed this training. Thank you everybody for your suggestions and stuff online. I appreciate all the comments, and this is being recorded and will be posted hopefully within the next day or two on the ShopBot website. So thank you, and hope you will get out and try this project and put it to use.